Hey guys, how's it going? This is episode 3. I'm going to end up doing a voiceover and all that, so here we go. Okay guys, so here it begins. Now, we did not, in this series, show the assembly of the crankshaft, connecting rod assembly and all of that, installing the bearings. So we're basically, go back to my wide deck video on that. What we're doing right here is we are cleaning the parting surface where we're going to be putting any gasketing kind of materials and or just cleaning it, making sure everything is absolutely squeaky clean. The sealant we're going to be using is the 515, so we're going to be using that. That should be absolutely fabulous. Kind of looks like a strawberry jam when you put it on, but it allows you to eliminate the use of the silk thread, so it's kind of nice that way. We also get rid of all any kind of cleaning in assembly type stuff that might be in there. So we're getting rid of all this stuff, cleaning everything up. And then what we're doing is making sure all the bushings and all that stuff are clean. Now in the mains, there are going to be O-rings. We'll once we get everything absolutely clean, we'll insert the O-rings. And those go on all 6 bolts or 3 mains. So the other thing we're going to do is we're going to give I give a light coating, just a very light coating of oil on the mains, saddles. A lot of folks put those in dry. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with just putting a light film, and I'm doing that mostly for corrosion reasons, make sure that there's not any issues with regard with that. Kate's helping us on this one, helping assemble the engine. So anytime you get to doing the final mate up on an engine, you really need to have someone else helping you out. You can see the camshaft there. That is the late style camshaft, one-piece camshaft. These narrow deck engines, in fact, we just took a few apart. They will have a 2-piece. You can get 2-piece camshafts. I like to put the single piece in. If you are going to put the single piece camshaft in, replacing an existing 2-piece camshaft, then you'll need to have the accessory case machine for that, and your engine shop can handle that no problem. Machine shop. We use Crankcase services in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Very pleased with them. Sand Springs, Oklahoma, actually, to be absolutely accurate. We've had very good luck with them. The folks up there treat us very well, and we've had nothing but fabulous service from them. So that's the vendor we like to use. That's not anybody that you have to use, but we've had very good luck with them, and they've stuck with us, and we've stuck with them. So it's very, very, very beneficial that way. Again, we're cleaning everything absolutely hermetically, perfectly clean. We're not in an open shop. We're not in an open hangar with the doors blowing or the wind blowing. So we're trying to keep this as clean as possible. I have had some folks tell me, they said, oh yeah, we run the engine, and then, after the engine, we get the test run done. Then we pull the filter out and get all the lint from the red rags out of the filter, which kind of makes my head explode, knowing that there's that much debris. A lot of the damage that you'll see on your main bearings, connecting rod bearings, and all that, the circular grooves, much of that is actually assembly dirt. So we're actually coming in here with acetone and a rag and just making sure that something, and I'm going to reduce or lacquer thin or something like that. Just absolutely making sure this thing is absolutely hermetically clean. Hospital clean. Space shuttle clean, I guess. But we don't have those anymore. Now all the bearings have been measured, all the bearings have been placed. So we're getting all that stuff done. We're cleaning off everything. Again, you cannot clean enough. That's all I'm going to say about that. Keep track of your rags, just like in humans. Keep track of your rags. Make sure you don't leave anything inside any cavities, and everything is absolutely clean. There's no dirt, no scratches. Make sure everything is perfect. What I'm cleaning up right now is the front main bearing. You can see it's a long bearing. It kind of goes in 90 degrees to normal, and you'll see what I'm doing here is I'm mating these up, and then I'm going to set them in place, and that's determined by the dowel pins and all of that. Once we set it in place, and this is just temporary, we're going to mark the sides with a pencil, just a light pencil line. And the reason we're doing that is so that when this is on the crankshaft and it's all globbed up with lubricant, assembly lube, oil, and all of that, we can then rotate that exactly to make sure that it goes home to the dowel pins that we can't see underneath. So that's the reason there. That's pretty much the only weird thing. And any Lycoming is going to be that way, pretty much. The other thing I'll do is I'll gloop them up. And we're using our lubricant mix per the Lycoming overhaul manual. And then we basically glue it, so to speak, onto the crankshaft so it'll stay put and not fall off as we lower the crankshaft in. The other bearings will all be set into the crankcase themselves. You can see Kate putting those in there. They will be tapped into place. They also pick up a dowel pin, and they'll be tapped into place and lubricated and all that. On assembly, we're not using any metal hammers. The only hammers we might be using to tap things into place are going to be plastic or rubber mallets, maybe leather even. But again, be real careful of any shards of rubber mallet that might sling off if you're doing something sharp. You shouldn't be doing anything sharp because this is all pretty highly machined stuff. This thing should go together easy. It will be a little bit obtuse sometimes, but it should go together very nicely and not require any kind of beating the heck out of it to get it together. If you're doing that, then you're doing something wrong. So again, what I'm trying to do here is make sure everything's down in the dowel pin. There is actually a little bit of space around the dowel pin, but there's also a notch in the bearing, and we're making sure that that is in place and it's pushed down. Everything's good. Now, if you need to hit something, again, I've got a metal hammer, but I'm using it as a wood drift, and I'm making sure that it bottoms out into the dowel pin area. Very important. We don't want that to spin. Check, 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 check. Triple check, double check. And sometimes they're a little finicky. Same thing on the number 3 main. Make sure it's perfect. And we're trying to get it even with make sure it's not rocked one way or the other, but we want it even with the crankcase parting face or machine face. Same thing on the other. We want to make sure that the dowel pin is in the proper position. Also on some bearings, they will have oil holes, and we want to make sure those oil holes match up. So definitely double checks. Depending on the engines and the bearings, all of the oil holes may or may not be on both bearing halves. So be very vigilant on that, is to understand the oil passages, make sure everything's lined up. And then again, just tap, 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 get them in place. And you're going to be getting goopy after a while too. So lots of paper towels or red rags handy so that you can keep yourself clean. You're not sticking to everything in the world. And rear main, setting the rear main. So the front main is on the crankshaft. You can see it behind me there, that silver area on the bottom of the crankshaft. The middle and aft main are also in the crankcases. They're set. And then what we're doing is we're also lubricating. We're putting the O-rings on to the center bushing, and then also the studs on the crankcases. Now this particular crankcase, all of the studs are essentially threaded into the main crankcase. So you can see that we've got two sticking out on the crankcase in front of us, and we've got the four that are sticking out of the other crankcase. And that is going to be a little bit of a pickle when we get to assembling the engine, because of the long stud length. It's a little bit of an alignment hassle. Now we're putting our lifters in. We're going to put the lifters in each half. Now the half that we're looking at right now, it will just sit there and lay down no problem. And then what we're going to do is we're going to put the camshaft in the part that we are going to be lowering down. The reason is, if we lower the upper case down, all those lifters will fall out. So we put the camshaft in the upper half as we're lowering it down. And we're going to hook that in with a piece of wire. Typically just a piece of 14 or 12 gauge copper wire. Electrical wire is fine. Single core, we just use a piece of single core house wire, Romex type stuff. Strip it, and then it's just bare metal. Now, you'll also hear folks talk about putting it together vertically. I am surprised people are doing that, but they feel the need. I'm installing O-rings here up on the very front, the front two through bolts. So we have the O-rings on the center bushings. We have O-rings on all the studs. So we're in pretty good shape there. You can see here the O-rings coming down, then they go down to the shoulder area. Again, slop it up real well with oil as you are, or your assembly lube, as you are putting those down the studs, because they are cut. So there's two there, two forward, and then we've got the two in the very nose. So it's all ticking and tying real good. The brown schmoo you see on the inside of the crankcase, that's just some Aladyne that is has slopped during the Aladyne process of rework of the crankcase. It's just, if nothing else, cosmetic. Right now I'm putting assembly lube on. Now I've used all of the Lycoming approved lubricants to lubricate all the steel surfaces. So we're using it per the overhaul manual. I believe it is a revision 14 as of this writing. But we're using all of that, and in addition to that, I use some additional lube. More is better. So I use some engine oil lube that I've used in other machine operations. Again, lubricating the bearing areas with the mix per Lycoming, and then that goes in the crankcase. And I'm going to put it in the other crankcase because we're making sure everything works there, lubing everything up. And I think what we're going to do is put it in the other crankcase. You can see it actually takes a little bit of alignment to get that just right. Now we'll come back to that camshaft. What we're doing here is getting the front main bearing arranged. And we had our pencil marks. You can see the crankshaft's in a little bit at an angle, but we're going to have to lift it up. We're making sure also our rods in the correct orientation, which ones are up. And there we go. Make sure the correct rods are up, and then the other two rods are down. And also, when we assemble the crankshaft, to make sure that our rod number orientation is correct, whether it's up or down per manufacturer. Now the problem here is there's so much suction from the lubricants, it's kind of tough to get that bearing kind of unstuck, and we've got to get it in the correct place. And what we're doing is we're looking at the pencil lines that we just made, make sure that they're dialed in exactly perfect. And it's a bit of a sloppy mess, so now all our hands are completely full of goo and all that. Then we make sure the thrust face of the crankshaft, all that is clean, all that is clear, looking good, and then making sure everything still spins well. That's our big measure. We'll lay those down. And then what we're going to do is we're getting ready to put the sealant on and whatnot. What that means is we're cleaning. So we dribbled some oil and we're going to make sure that's all clean. This is definitely a two-person. One person could put an engine together, but if you're doing a 6-cylinder, it is definitely a two-person job. It is a lot of heavy weight, especially when you get into the weight of the crankshaft assembly, things like that. On a 4-cylinder Continental Lycoming, you can, as an individual, you can get away with it. You're just going to have to eat your Wheaties and make sure that just do it slow. But the crankshaft assembly is pretty much the hardest part. It's just heavy with all the connecting rods and all that. It does get heavy. Also, if you have a counterweighted crankshaft, you're also going to get into that too. Again, lubing all, making sure all the O-rings have lube on them, all that. Making sure all those are lubed up. And what we're doing is we're preparing to put the Loctite 515 on. And it's just got to be absolutely clean. If you don't clean, if you don't take the time, your engine will probably leak. And we're using odorless mineral spirits to get all the oil off. And then after that, then we're using an MEK to get the mineral spirits off so that it is absolutely squeaky clean. Now I'm putting the 515. It looks like I'm putting a crankshaft. I'm not. I'm putting it on the parting surface, the upper and lower parting surfaces. Now, Lycoming has service bulletins and instructions in the overhaul manual. It tells you exactly where to put the sealant and where not to put the sealant. So be very diligent. Make sure you have the correct publications, the current publications. And if you're doing this, you should have, at a minimum, the parts manual and the current overhaul manual, Lycoming overhaul manual. Watching this YouTube is not approved data for overhauling an engine. The other thing you'll notice too is on this engine, we paint the components before we assemble. That's just the way we do it. The Lycoming factory actually will assemble the entire engine and then paint it as one enchilada, one big thing. There's nothing wrong with doing that. When I worked in a repair station going to school in Florida, that's what we did. They were fleet engines. They're just paints just to protect from corrosion. So your level of vanity is entirely up to you as far as the aesthetics. What we do is we use the Lycoming engine enamel, which is you can either get from Randolph or Superflight. And then we actually do a clear coat on that urethane clear coat, and what that does is that allows the engine to be cleaned and inspected very easily. Dirt just falls off. So that's the way we do it. Do what you need to do, but that's the way we do it. Pretty engines don't necessarily run the best, but an absolute clean, squeaky clean, that to us, that is our signature, is doing it to that level. And again, you can see we've got the pubs in front of us at all times. So going through, double checking the organization as far as we're looking at the service instruction with regards to the putting out the different where the sealant goes. Now, on some engine manufacturers like Continental, they will tell you to put the sealant on both surfaces or two different types of sealant. That's the way they do it. On Lycoming, I believe they will tell you to put it only needs to be put on one side. So you want to put enough that it'll squeeze out, but you don't want to put on so much that it will dribble out of the seams. This 515 it will kind of harden up, dry up a bit, but you don't want it to be dribbling down the inside of the crankshaft or the crankcase to the point where it fouls the bearing surface on the camshaft or anything else, or it gets down by the front main. Loctite 515 is kind of, as I said, transparent. It goes on like a jelly or marmalade type. You want it where you can see through it, but you don't want it so thin that it's not going to squeeze out. There is a gap that we're trying to get filled, but we're not having so much. It's not like we're gluing two pieces of wood together. We just want to make sure we have a very nice uniform layer. Take your time, no rush. The big thing here folks need to understand is it's going to take you a few hours to put this together. And this engine, there's a very good chance that this engine will stay together for 20 or 30 years. So a few minutes, a few hours on the front end really is going to affect the back end. So just take your time and all that. Try to keep your tool area clean of only what you need. You can see here we've got a screwdriver, paper towels. We've got hardware that's going to be starting to assembly area, the engine and all that in the black trays. And then we've got our various other stuff going on, our adhesives and all that. Oh, look at this. The camshaft jumped over to the other case. Who knew? So, yep, we had the camshaft. We moved it over to the other case. And we took our piece of copper wire. And what this does is we're going to basically bring that wire down and hook it around some of the cylinder attached studs. Just kind of wrap it around those. That will keep the camshaft from falling down, as it were, when we turn that case upside down. Now, the parting surface and all that has been cleaned and all that, but we're keeping that there. Then when we flip the case over to install it, all the tappets will stay in place. Again, we're just doing a little double check there. Then when you have the engine assembled, you can just remove the copper wire. Easy peasy. Works out real well. Here we go. Case half going in. You can see the arrangement of the camshaft. We have all the O-rings in place. We have all that going on. And a little bit blind, but we're trying to get stuff done. You can see here I'm a little crooked. And so it's not going to want to go down. Now Kate is holding the connecting rods up. There we go. We've got it leveled up pretty well. And then once you get it leveled up and straightened up, things work quite nicely. So then what will happen is you're going to get it down to the shoulder area of the center studs and the bushings and all that. And then we'll take some encouraging to get it the last 1/8 of an inch or 5 millimeters or so. And that's, again, we're just going to tap it in. Try to tap it as evenly as possible. We're just overcoming the friction that's holding those mains. And the reason for that is that keeps the mains pinned. The reason Lycoming does that is have the shoulder bolts, is that is your alignment dowels basically for the main bearings and all of that. That keeps your main bearings from fretting from overload and all that during operation. Then what we got is we're putting washers on the through studs, and we'll start tightening the through studs. So we're using large area washers to bring it down. Now we do have plates. Since this video was made, since I made this last year, we have torque plates, which essentially do the same job. We have torque plates, and we've been using those. That being said, we also have DXF. So if someone would like to cut their own torque plates or whatever, we have DXF files. We'll be more than happy to share them with you. And then you can burn your own steel plate if you know somebody with a plasma cutter or something of that nature, and you can make your own. But we're basically stacking up washers, and then we're just using common grade nuts. We're not using our cylinder hold down nuts because we don't want to put any distress on those. And then we're going to keep the threads even as we tighten things up. Some of the washers are in the number 3, I take it back, number 1 cylinder kind of armpit there where the dipstick goes and the pressure relief. You're going to need to actually grind some large area washers off a bit to get them to fit in there so that you don't foul the radius of the crankcase. Just a thing. And again, we've had those for years, and we've used those for years. It's our special assembly washers. Lots of washers, lots of nuts. Nice thing is, as those nuts get worn out, we can just replace them low cost at the local hardware store. And those are just, as I said, that's part of our assembly tooling. As we're installing cylinders, all that hardware goes back to storage. And then we're just slowly bringing it down, and we're trying to do this as evenly as possible. Both front and aft, and then top and bottom, we're trying to make sure that we keep everything nice and straight, a little bit at a time. You can see the gap has gotten quite a bit less. Now those are studs there. Those two are studs. Get those all tight. As soon as we get everything tight there, then we will start the torque sequence. The torque sequence is definitely very well described in the Lycoming publications, so follow those religiously. Once we get it down, and then we will put the case edge bolts, you see all those divots in front of you there. All of those will end up going in, and just little things is make sure that your hoist hook is in the proper position. Kate is now uncurling the copper wire that we put in. Took it off of the one stud. Now we'll get it off the other stud. And it's just, we just hand wrap that around. And then she's holding on to the ends and going to clip them. Very important. Get all fought away from the aircraft and the engine. And then basically, because it's soft copper, you can kind of just either unhook it, but you can kind of pull it around and it's not going to do any damage. It just takes a little grunt to get that thing out of there. Boom, it's out. So nothing on the inside of the engine. Most importantly is now we've also got to put bolts in. We've got bolts in the very front that need to go in. Those are just actually per Lycoming. Those are just, I believe, AN bolts. All the other hardware is Lycoming bolts, which is, I believe, a grade 5 bolt of all things. All the split line bolts. On the bottom in the sump area, those bolts have cotter keys and castle nuts. Those will require safety wiring. All of the external bolts for the split line are all lock washers. And where Continental uses split lock, Lycoming uses star washers. They use internal star washers. And also all completely described in the parts manual. That's where you want to have the parts manual as you're assembling the engine, making sure you have all the correct hardware in the correct places. Now an O360, this particular one is an O360. O360s and O320s are essentially the same engine as far as assembly goes. You're going to have narrow deck, you're going to have wide deck, you're going to have conical mount, you're going to have dynafocal mount, but for all intents and purposes, they're about the same. So all these procedures are very, very common. You can see now a little bit of, kind of hard to see, but you can see a little bit of adhesive starting to ooze out of the center seam, which is good. Now we haven't torqued the center seam with the bolts. We're just putting a snug on the through bolts by hand. We're not taking it up to factory torque yet. Hey guys, so that's about it. We got the two crankcases together. We got all the valves in, or pardon me, the lifters in, the cam in, and we're ready now to put this back on the stand. So next time you see this engine, it's going to be on our roll around vertical stand. And there's a lot of folks out there that wonder why we don't assemble the engine vertically, and it's just a drizzling pain in the neck. Lycoming assembles them horizontal. Continental assembles them horizontal. You look at all their manuals. We do it horizontal. That's the way I was taught, is to do the initial crankcase made horizontal. And it's just less mess. So that's the way it goes in. Otherwise, you're just fighting everything and all that stuff. So that's what's going on here. This episode of HangaRatz O360 Narrow Deck Engine Overhaul. Go fly yourself.